The day Emeka's declaration reached the village, 3 women stopped breathing for different reasons. One was Eunice, who had been waiting for this moment for 7 years. The young king had come into his throne early after Obiora collapsed during the harvest festival and never rose again. Emeka was 24, sharp-eyed and unmarried. And now, standing before his kinsmen in the great hall with the morning light cutting across his face, he made it official. Every young woman above 18 years of age, he said, should prepare herself. In 7 days, I will choose my queen. The village exploded. Mothers pulled daughters aside. Girls rushed to mirrors. But in the compound of one particular household, the news landed like a lit torch on dry grass. Eunice sat her daughter Ngozi down before the echo had even faded. "The throne is ours," she said, gripping Ngozi's wrist. "You are the most beautiful girl in this village, and you will walk out of that palace as queen. I don't care what it costs, you will not fail me." Ngozi did not flinch. She had grown up on her mother's hunger, and it had become her own. In the next room, her stepsister Amara was being spoken to very differently. Blessing, Amara's mother, held her daughter's face gently in both hands. "Go," she said softly. "Be yourself. If he is meant for you, he will see you. Not your effort, but you." Amara smiled, nodded, and quietly began to prepare. On the appointed day, 32 girls gathered in the palace courtyard. King Emeka walked among them in silence, the elders watching from the shade. He took his time. He spoke to some, observed others, and when he was done, he returned to the front and raised his hand. 5 will remain, he announced. They will live in my palace for 1 week. After that week, I will choose one to be my queen. 5 names were called. Ngozi's, Amara's, and 3 others. Ngozi's jaw tightened when she heard Amara's name. He turned and looked at her stepsister, at her calm face, her unassuming wrapper, her unbothered eyes, and something vicious stirred in her chest. Not her. Anyone but her. That night, she was at her mother's door. Eunice was already waiting, a small parcel of dried leaves in her palm. "Rub this on your face every morning before he sees you," she whispered. "His eyes will stick to you like honey." For the first 2 days inside the palace, it worked. King Emeka glanced at Ngozi at the dinner table. He noticed her smile from across the courtyard. The other girls saw it and grew anxious. Even Amara noticed and simply said nothing, returning to whatever quiet task was in front of her. But by the 3rd day, the palace walls had seen enough of Ngozi's true face. She snapped at a maid for bringing water that wasn't warm enough. She ridiculed one of the other girls in front of everyone for mispronouncing a word. She spoke to the elderly palace cook, a woman old enough to be her grandmother, as though she were a piece of furniture. King Emeka heard it all, said nothing, but his eyes slowly and surely began to look elsewhere. They found Amara helping the young servant boy Tobe clean up a mess he hadn't even made. They found her sitting beside old Mama Chidinma at lunch, keeping the woman company and laughing at her stories. They found her at the well one evening, drawing water for a maid whose hands were full. She never looked up to check if the king was watching. He always was. By the 5th day, something had settled in Emeka's chest. Quiet, certain, and warm. He did not announce it. He did not show it. But when a man knows, he knows. And Ngozi knew too. She watched his eyes that evening at supper. Watched them pass over her like she was part of the war. Watched them linger just a breath too long on Amara's face across the table. Her hand tightened around her cup. That night, she slipped out of the palace. Eunice opened the door before she could knock. "It's not working," Ngozi whispered. "He's choosing her. I can see it." Eunice was quiet for a long moment. Then she turned, walked into the back room, and returned with something different. A small dark vial that smelled of something deep and wrong, like earth that had never seen sunlight. "This one is stronger," Eunice said. "Put it on my face again?" Eunice's smile was slow and cold. "No, put it in her food." The morning of the final day opened like any other. Bird song, the smell of firewood, the distant rhythm of palace drums warming up for the ceremony ahead. Inside the palace kitchen, the 5 girls' breakfast portions were being prepared. Ngozi moved early. Before the others were fully awake, before the kitchen filled with staff, she found the moment she needed. Amara's bowl sitting unattended near the kitchen doorway, and she emptied the vial into it, every last dark drop. She returned to her seat, folded her hands neatly in her lap, and waited. She had never felt so calm in her life. What she did not see, could not have seen, was Chioma, the palace maid assigned to serve breakfast that morning, come rushing in from the wrong end of the kitchen, pick up the bowls in the wrong order, and without a single pause, set the contaminated bowl down in front of the nearest seated girl, in front of Ngozi. Chioma placed a clean bowl before Amara and moved on without a second glance. Ngozi stared down at the food. She saw nothing wrong. Why would she? It was her plan. Her portion was supposed to be safe. She had not marked the bowls. She had trusted that the one she poisoned would stay where she left it. She looked up. Across the table, Amara closed her eyes briefly, murmured a prayer, and began to eat. Ngozi picked up her spoon. She watched Amara's face, waiting for the first sign of confusion, the first flicker of something wrong behind the eyes. She waited through 3 spoonfuls, 5. She watched with the patience of someone who had already won. She did not notice her own hands beginning to tremble. She did not notice the strange warmth spreading from her throat. She did not notice until she stood up. And then she could not stop. The bowl hit the floor. Every head turned. Ngozi opened her mouth, and everything she had spent weeks burying came pouring out like flood water through a broken dam. The charm on her face, her mother's instructions, the nights they had spent planning, the vial, Amara's food, all of it, every word, every scheme, every dark and twisted corner of what they had done, spilled into the middle of the palace dining hall, in front of the maids, the elders, the other girls, and King Emeka himself, who had walked in at the sound of the commotion and now stood in the doorway with an expression no one in that room would ever forget. Ngozi wept. She shouted. She laughed at nothing. She grabbed the table and knocked her own cup over and did not seem to know it. The truth was out, and it was merciless. When it was over, she crumpled into her chair like cloth with nobody inside it. The hall was absolutely still. King Emeka stood motionless for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet. The kind of quiet that is louder than shouting. "Take her out of my palace." Then he looked at the elder standing nearest to him. "And bring me Eunice." The ceremony was not cancelled. Some of the elders had suggested it. Delay things, let the dust settle, let the whispers die down. But King Emeka shook his head. "What happened this morning does not change what I already know," he said. "We continue." The courtyard was arranged as planned. Palm fronds lining the path, the great wooden throne at the head, the elders seated in their places. The drums played. The 4 remaining girls were led out in a line, dressed in their finest, each one carrying a private hope and a visible nervousness. Except one. Amara walked out with the same quietness she had carried all week. She had no charm on her face, no rehearsed smile, no careful posture. She had simply washed her face, tied her wrapper neatly, and prayed the prayer her mother Blessing had taught her years ago. The one that ended with, "Let what is mine find me, and let me be ready when it does." The drums softened. King Emeka rose. He walked the line slowly. The girl who sang beautifully, the one who wore the finest jewels, the one with the wealthy family name. He passed them all, not unkindly, but without stopping. He stopped at Amara. She looked up at him. He looked down at her. And for a moment, the drums, the elders, the watching eyes, all of it fell away. "I have been watching you all week," he said. "And not once did you perform for me. You never tried to make me look. You were simply good. In every small, unnoticed moment, you were good." Amara's eyes filled. "I don't want a queen who knows how to impress a crowd," Emeka continued. "I want a queen who treats the cook the same way she treats the king." He reached out and took her hand with the steadiness of a man who had made his decision long before today. "Amara, will you sit beside me on this throne?" She thought of her mother, of those gentle hands on her face and those simple words. "Be yourself. Let him find you." She exhaled. "Yes," she said, "I will." The courtyard erupted. Women ululated so loudly, birds scattered from the palace roof. The elders struck their staffs on the ground in approval. Old Mama Chidima, seated at the far end, wiped her eyes with her wrapper and smiled the smile of someone who had seen enough of life to know that goodness, however long it waits, always finds its reward. Eunice was brought before the village council that same afternoon. She did not deny what she had done. The charm was still in her home, the evidence still on her hands. The council deliberated and their judgment was firm. She was disgraced before the people she had always tried to impress, stripped of every status she had schemed so long to protect, and sent away from the village. Ngozi, slowly recovering from what the charm had done to her, was permitted to return home, but to a home that was now quieter, emptier, and stripped of every grand ambition that had once filled it to the ceiling. She had a long time to sit with herself, and perhaps in that long, humbling silence, to finally begin. Amara was crowned on a Saturday, under a sky so blue it looked painted. She wore no charm. She carried no skin.
she sat on the throne of Eze-Obiera's kingdom beside a king who had chosen her, not for what he showed him, but for who she was when she thought no one was watching. And the people of that kingdom who had seen enough of hunger and scheming and crowns chased at any cost, looked at their new queen and felt, for the first time in a long time, that things were going to be all right. Because goodness, when it finally sits on a throne, rules for a long, long time.